People think money reveals who you are, but sometimes it exposes who you've always been. A billionaire named Daniel Hayes believed his mansion was filled with love. His wife, Victoria, always smiled at charity galas, always talked about helping the less fortunate, and always made sure cameras were around when she donated. But behind closed doors, there were no cameras. There was only one witness: the maid. A quiet, shy girl named Amara, who worked day and night without a complaint. Until one morning, Daniel walked into a room he was never supposed to enter. And what he saw shattered everything he believed about his wife. Amara rarely looked anyone in the eyes. When she walked, it was as if she was trying to take up as little space as possible. Like she was apologizing for even existing. She worked silently, moved silently, lived silently, and Victoria liked it that way. To everyone watching from the outside, Victoria Hayes was the picture of elegance. Perfect hair, perfect designer outfits, and a smile so polished it looked rehearsed. At charity events, she hugged children, kissed babies, and wiped staged tears from her cheek. But you only had to step inside the mansion to see the difference. The masks came off. The smile faded. And the cruelty came out. Whenever Victoria rang the bell, Amara rushed, even if she was in the middle of eating. Whenever Victoria snapped her fingers, Amara apologized, even if she didn't know what she did wrong. Victoria never raised a hand in public. No. She raised her voice. Cutting, sharp, intentional. And the house staff noticed everything. In the kitchen, when they were sure no cameras or microphones were around, they whispered, "She doesn't treat the maid like a human. She screams at her off camera. She only acts nice when Daniel's around." One day, the driver found Amara outside on the patio, crying so hard she could barely breathe. He asked what happened. She just shook her head and wiped her tears. "Please, don't say anything. I need this job." Every staff member felt helpless. Because in this house, Victoria wasn't just the wife. She was the queen. And everyone obeyed, including Amara. Especially Amara. Then, one silent night changed everything. The staff was cleaning the dining hall after a charity dinner. Victoria had just left for the spa. Daniel was in his office reviewing financial files. The chef, a quiet, soft-spoken man named Miguel, approached him with shaking hands. He didn't speak. He didn't explain. He just slipped Daniel a small folded note. Daniel unfolded it. "Sir, check the cameras." 4 simple words. But they froze Daniel's heartbeat. He looked up at Miguel, confused. Miguel's voice trembled. "Please, sir, just check." Daniel frowned. "There are cameras in the library." Miguel nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. Your wife insisted on it. Said she needed security." Daniel blinked. Security. In a room filled with nothing but books? He hesitated, thumb hovering over the security app on his phone. Why would Victoria need security from the maid? The thought stung. Amara wasn't a threat to anyone. She carried laundry baskets like she was afraid of making noise. She apologized to the walls if she bumped into them. Security from her? That made no sense. Something felt wrong. Really wrong. Daniel opened the app. The screen loaded, and that one click began the unraveling. At first, there was nothing. Just Amara sweeping, quietly, carefully. Then Victoria walked in. The expression on her face wasn't annoyance. It was hunger, power, dominance. She walked up to Amara and snapped her fingers, inches from her face. No words. Just entitlement. Amara flinched and bowed her head. Daniel watched, puzzled. Then Victoria leaned in. The audio didn't catch every word, but the tone was unmistakable, venomous. She jabbed her finger into Amara's shoulder. Hard enough that Amara took a step backward. Still no reaction. No anger. Just fear. Then Victoria's eyes landed on something on the dresser. A hair-straightening iron. She picked it up, turned it on, set it on the highest heat, and held it, slowly, deliberately, inches from Amara's arm. Daniel stopped breathing. Amara begged. You could see it in her body language, in the way her hands shook, in how she squeezed her eyes shut like she was bracing for impact. Victoria smirked. She enjoyed it. Not the iron. The fear. The control. The power over someone who couldn't fight back. Daniel instinctively reached toward the screen as if he could stop it through the glass. His wife, the woman who claimed she cared about helping the less fortunate, was hurting someone who depended on her. But something else caught Daniel's eye. Amara did not scream. She did not fight. She stood there, frozen, with the emptiest expression he had ever seen. As if she had been through this before. As if this wasn't the first time. The hair iron glowed orange. Victoria lifted it higher. And Daniel snapped. He couldn't watch another second. He grabbed his keys and stormed out of his office. The camera footage was still playing on his phone as he walked. The chef and driver watched him leave, eyes wide. None of them knew what was going to happen. But they knew one thing. The billionaire had finally seen the truth. Daniel reached the room faster than he thought possible. He didn't knock. He didn't warn them. He kicked the door open so hard it hit the wall. Victoria whirled around. Oh, Daniel. She messed up the... Stop talking, he said. His voice wasn't loud. It was cold. Controlled. Terrifying. He walked past Victoria without looking at her, gently took the hot iron from Amara's shaking hands, and set it aside. Amara was trembling. Daniel pulled out a black credit card and placed it in her hand. Pack your things, he said quietly. You're leaving this house today. Victoria gasped, a hand flying to her chest. You're firing her? Daniel finally looked at her. No. His voice was ice. I'm promoting her. The room went silent. You, he pointed at Victoria, are leaving this house. Every servant in the hallway stopped. For the first time in a long time, Amara looked someone in the eyes. And she didn't look away. The phone screen began buffering. Daniel's heartbeat synced with the loading circle as if time itself had slowed down. The room was silent, yet inside his ribs, everything was pounding. Click. The footage opened. And there she was. Victoria. Standing only inches from Amara's face. No cameras. No guests. No audience to impress. Just the real version of her. Her lips were moving rapidly, clearly yelling, but the mic on the camera didn't pick up sound from that angle. Daniel leaned in closer, squinting, trying to read her lips. Her arm suddenly shot forward. She jabbed her finger into Amara's shoulder. Hard. Amara flinched, her body recoiling like she expected worse. Yet she didn't react. Didn't speak. Didn't defend herself. She just lowered her eyes, a silent apology for existing. Daniel felt something twist inside him. He had seen people argue before, but he had never seen fear like that. Victoria stepped closer, invading Amara's space. Her smile stretched into something sharp, not kindness, domination, power. Then Daniel saw her do something that made his blood run cold. Victoria turned toward the dresser. Her fingers curled around a hair-straightening iron. She plugged it in with a slow, deliberate motion, as if she'd done this before. Daniel stopped breathing. Victoria lifted the iron, glanced at Amara, then pressed the power switch. Click. The red light on the handle blinked, then turned solid. The device began to heat. Victoria didn't rush, didn't hesitate. She took her time. She lifted the iron inch by inch, watching Amara's reaction. Her eyes glittered with a cruel curiosity, the thrill of having absolute control. Amara stepped back, terrified, hands shaking, lips trembling. Her whole body screamed, "Please stop," without uttering a single word. Victoria smirked. That smirk. Daniel had seen that expression at charity events. The one where she pretended to care, pretended to feel empathy. But now, without witnesses, that same smile revealed the truth. She enjoyed it. Daniel zoomed in on the footage. Victoria held the iron close to Amara's arm. Too close. Close enough that Amara squeezed her eyes shut and backed into the wall. Daniel's jaw locked. His hand tightened around the phone. He had faced hostile investors, boardroom betrayals, negotiations worth billions. But this was different. This was personal. He felt something tearing at him. A mix of shock, disbelief, and a rising fury that he couldn't swallow down. He watched Victoria tilt her head, amused, like she was studying a reaction. Amara whispered something, tiny, desperate, pleading. Victoria stepped even closer. Daniel could see everything in Amara's eyes. Not just fear. History. This wasn't the first time. Amara's body language told a story she would never dare speak. She stood frozen, the posture of someone who had learned that resisting only made things worse. Victoria didn't need the iron. The real thrill was watching Amara break. Daniel suddenly felt ashamed. Ashamed that this was happening in his house. Under his roof. Under his name. He replayed every time Victoria smiled in his presence. Every time she gave a speech about helping the less fortunate. Every time she insisted that Amara serve her personally. All those pieces clicked together, forming a picture he refused to see until now. He whispered to himself, voice barely audible. No, this can't be real. But it was. He watched his wife, the woman he promised to protect, become a stranger in front of him. A stranger holding a heated weapon, hovering it over someone she believed was beneath her. The footage continued. Victoria leaned in, lips moving again. This time, the microphone caught a few words, faint but clear enough. You don't get to say no. Daniel felt the floor drop out from beneath him. His wife wasn't just controlling. She was enjoying her power over someone powerless. He ran a hand through his hair, pacing the room. His chest felt tight, like air refused to enter his lungs. He whispered to himself. This wasn't stress. This wasn't a bad moment. This is who she is. The disbelief cracked. Reality finally settled in. He had spent years building empires, negotiating mergers, buying companies. Yet somehow, he didn't even know the person sleeping in his own bed. The wife he saw publicly was a performance. A philanthropist. A social icon. A symbol of compassion. The wife he was seeing now. Cruel. Calculating. Addicted to control. How long had she been like this? How many times had Amara flinched at the sound of her footsteps? How many nights had she cried silently so no one would hear? Daniel swallowed hard. The billionaire who could buy anything could not buy back the moment he realized he had married a monster. The footage kept playing. Victoria raised the iron a little higher. Amara squeezed her eyes shut again. That was it. Daniel didn't need to see more. He grabbed his keys and ran. He didn't think. He didn't plan. He didn't care what the staff saw. He had only one thought pulsing through his veins. Stop her. Because sometimes, money doesn't reveal who you are. Power does. And in that moment, Daniel Hayes finally understood. He wasn't living with a wife. He was living with someone addicted to control. Someone who believed kindness was weakness. Someone who saw vulnerability as an invitation to dominate. Someone he no longer recognized. The woman he married. The woman he trusted. The woman he promised to love. Had become a stranger. And the maid he barely noticed was the one person suffering most. Daniel tightened his grip on the steering wheel as he sped home. This wasn't about wealth anymore. This wasn't about image. This was about justice. And no one in that house knew what was about to happen next. Daniel didn't burst in. He didn't scream. He didn't throw open the door like a man enraged. He walked in silent, and that silence was louder than any shout. Victoria froze. The hot iron hovered in her hand, still radiating heat. Amara stood like a trapped animal, shoulders curled in, eyes wide with fear. Victoria's face shifted instantly. From predator to actress. Her voice suddenly became soft, breathy, trembling. "Oh, Daniel. This isn't," she messed up the... Daniel lifted his hand. Just one finger. "Stop talking." His voice wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It was controlled. Controlled emotion is always more terrifying than yelling. Victoria swallowed, blinking rapidly as she tried to arrange her expression into innocence. "Daniel, she damaged my..." He walked past her without looking at her, as if she were furniture, not human. His attention was only on Amara. Amara flinched as he approached, uncertain whether this was another punishment. Slowly, gently, Daniel reached toward her hands. She stiffened, expecting pain. Instead, he wrapped his fingers around the hot iron she was holding. She gasped, releasing it instantly. Daniel set it aside, far from her trembling hands. He spoke only 2 words. "You're safe." No one had ever said that to her before. Victoria's face twitched. She masked it with a laugh, but her voice shook. "Daniel, this girl is dramatic. She messes up everything I tell her to do." Amara stepped back instinctively. Daniel stepped with her, blocking Victoria's reach. Then, slowly, calmly, he pulled his black credit card from his wallet. The staff watching from the hallway froze. Victoria blinked in confusion. "What are you doing?" Daniel placed the credit card into Amara's hands. The card that could buy cars, houses, futures. "Pack your things," he said softly. "You're leaving this house today." For a second, Amara didn't react. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She didn't even breathe. Because in her world, leaving never came with permission. Only fear. Victoria snapped out of her shock and lunged forward. "You're firing her?" Daniel finally looked at her. Straight into her eyes. No. He let the silence linger. He wanted her to feel the sting before the blade. "I'm promoting her." The words hit like a slap. Victoria's face twisted. "Promoting? What does that even mean?" Daniel stepped closer, quiet, cold, unshakable. "It means she will never answer to you again." The hallway staff exchanged looks. This was the moment. The shift. The undoing of an entire power dynamic. Victoria's voice rose, shrill and desperate. "Daniel, she's manipulating you. She's lying to you. I am your wife." Daniel tilted his head. "No. You are a woman who abuses people who can't fight back." Victoria stepped closer, trying to soften her voice again. "You weren't supposed to see that footage." Daniel's jaw flexed. "No. I was supposed to remain blind." He gestured around the room. "You smiled for cameras. Donated money you didn't earn. You gave speeches about kindness." His eyes hardened. "And then tortured a girl behind closed doors." Amara stood in the corner, still clutching the card, disbelief flooding her face. Victoria scoffed defensively. "Oh please, she's overreacting. She's just the..." Daniel's voice cut through the air like steel. "Finish that sentence." Victoria froze. He took a step closer. Then another. "You call her just the maid. You treat her like she's beneath you. But the truth is—" He pointed toward the still recording camera. "You are nothing without someone to feel superior to." Victoria's face drained. "You're humiliating yourself," she hissed. "No," Daniel replied. "I'm holding you accountable." His phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. Footage of Victoria still displayed, paused at the exact moment she raised the iron. Daniel pressed a button, and the footage began streaming to every monitor on the mansion's security system. The hallway TVs, the kitchen screens, even the big 90-inch TV in the formal living room. The staff gasped. From every direction, they watched the truth. Victoria paled. "Daniel, turn that off." "You didn't want cameras?" he asked. "You insisted on them." He stepped closer. "So now they'll see." Every staff member stood still, witnessing the fall of the woman who believed she was untouchable. Victoria lunged toward the screen, but Daniel didn't move. "I built this home," she screamed. "No," Daniel corrected. "I built this home. You just posed for pictures inside it." Her hands shook. "You can't throw me out." Daniel reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folder. Legal documents. Prepared hours ago. He'd seen enough on the footage to act immediately. "This is a separation agreement," he said. Victoria's eyes widened. "You're divorcing me over her?" Daniel paused, then pointed at Amara. "I'm divorcing you because of who you are." Victoria shook her head, voice cracking. "You can't replace me with a maid." Daniel gave her the final blow. "I'm not replacing you. I'm removing you." Victoria's mouth fell open, speechless. He turned to Amara. "Go pack anything you want. Whatever you need. Take your time." Amara swallowed hard. "Where will I go?" Daniel looked at her gently. "Anywhere you want." Her lip trembled. No one had ever given her choice before. Daniel opened the door and gestured toward the hallway, where the staff stood watching, silent, supportive. "You're free." Amara slowly stepped out of the room, and for the first time, she didn't look down. Victoria collapsed into a chair, eyes filling with a rage she could no longer hide. "You'll regret this," she spat. Daniel walked to the door, then paused without turning around. "No," he said quietly. "You will." He closed the door behind him, and the sound echoed through the mansion like a final verdict. The next morning, Daniel sat in his office, not the one in his mansion, but the glass-walled top floor of Hayes International. The sky outside the windows was gray, storm gray, like the world was holding its breath. He didn't sleep. He didn't need to. Justice kept him awake. His lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Claire Beaumont, entered the room with a folder under her arm. "Are we doing this?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Play the footage." Claire tapped her tablet, and the screen behind him lit up with the security recording, the moment Victoria hovered the heated iron over Amara's skin. The board of directors watched in stunned silence. Most of them had met Victoria at charity galas and fundraisers. They had seen her shake hands with donors, hug children for the cameras, speak on stages about kindness, compassion, and women's empowerment. But now they saw the version she hid. No makeup, no cameras, just cruelty. On the footage, Victoria hissed. "You don't get to say no." Gasps rippled across the room. One board member covered his mouth in disbelief. Another whispered, "Oh my God!" Claire paused the video. The screen froze on Victoria's smirk. Cold. Calculated. Enjoying the dominance. Claire turned to the board. harassment, abuse, coercion. This violates the ethics charter of the Hayes Global Foundation. Daniel stood. She represented this foundation, he said, voice steady but carrying weight. She is not the brand. She is not the message. Kindness is not a costume, yet she only wore it for cameras. He took a breath. She is removed effective immediately. Her voting power, financial access, and public representation are hereby terminated. No one objected. They voted. Unanimous. Victoria Hayes, once the shining face of charity, was stripped of everything she leveraged to feel powerful. Her charity appearances? Gone. Her sponsorship contracts? Terminated. Her access to Daniel's accounts? Frozen. She went from being photographed under chandeliers to being escorted out of a boardroom with no applause. Her mask finally cracked. "Daniel, you cannot do this to me," she shouted, voice echoing off the glass walls. He didn't yell back. He didn't need to. You did it to yourself. Security opened the door. Victoria tried to collect herself, attempted one more desperate act, crying. Fake tears. Daniel just looked at her calmly. Power wasn't the problem, Victoria. What you chose to do with it was. She stormed out. The elevator doors shut. And just like that, the woman who believed she was untouchable became irrelevant. Hours later, Daniel returned to the mansion. Half the staff gathered in the foyer, whispering, all waiting for an update. But he wasn't looking for them. He was looking for Amara. He found her in the kitchen, standing beside a small suitcase, her entire life zipped into one bag. She clutched the black credit card he'd given her last night like it was fragile, like she was afraid someone would take it away. "You're leaving, right?" Daniel asked softly. Amara nodded. "Yes, sir. I don't want to be a burden. I'll find a small apartment. Maybe work at a diner. Just until I..." Daniel held up a hand. "You think I'm sending you away?" Amara blinked, confused. "I thought that's what people do with maids when they're done with them." Daniel stepped closer, voice gentle but firm. "Amara, I didn't save you from something. I freed you for something." She swallowed hard. He placed an envelope in her hands. "I found this on the counter," he said. "It had your name on it." Her eyes widened. She hadn't expected anyone else to see that envelope. She toyed with it nervously. Inside was her secret. Something she never thought would matter to people like them. "Open it," Daniel said. Her fingers shook as she slid her thumb beneath the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Formal letterhead. The words, "Congratulations. You have been accepted with full academic scholarship." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Ivy League," he said quietly. "Full ride." Tears filled her eyes instantly, overflowing before she could stop them. "You're not just the maid," Daniel said. "You're brilliant." Amara tried to speak, but emotion swallowed her voice. She wasn't silent because she lacked thoughts. She was silent because she had learned silence was safer. "I couldn't afford tuition," she whispered. "So I worked. I cleaned houses. I didn't want anyone to know because people look at you differently when you're poor." Daniel finished. Amara nodded. Daniel shook his head. "No. People look at you differently when they feel threatened by your potential." She stared at the acceptance letter like she was holding a ticket to another universe. "You won't pay for school," Daniel said, voice steady. Her head snapped up. "I will." She froze. No one had ever invested in her future, only used her labor. "Why?" she whispered. Daniel smiled faintly. "Because helping you isn't charity. It's respect." Amara's breath trembled. Then, for the first time, She lifted her chin, looked him in the eyes, and didn't look away. The staff, who'd been quietly watching from the doorway, suddenly broke into applause. Not because Daniel was wealthy, but because someone finally stood up for a person who had been invisible for too long. Praise filled the room, not for a billionaire saving a maid, but for a maid finally being seen. As Amara walked toward the exit, suitcase rolling behind her, sunlight streamed through the windows. A new beginning. A door not closed, but opened. That night, Daniel stood outside on the balcony, overlooking the city lights. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt awake. Because he realized something. The maid didn't need saving. The billionaire needed waking up. In a world full of power and noise, sometimes it takes one moment to finally see the truth. If this story made you feel something, then don't just scroll. Like the video. Subscribe to the channel. Turn on notifications. More stories are coming. Stories about courage, justice, and people who refuse to stay silent. You're not just watching. You're part of this community. See you in the next story.